The moment Flight 412 lifted off into the twilight sky, chaos erupted in a way no one could have foreseen. In the midst of the crowded economy cabin, Elijah Pierce, a distinguished black billionaire known for his groundbreaking ventures, found himself at the center of a startling upheaval. Without warning, security personnel rushed into the aisle, and before anyone could react, Elijah was forcefully restrained. Amid the confusion, a harsh metallic sound punctuated the air as he was handcuffed, and a visible gash marred his lip, a symbol of the violence he was enduring. In the cramped cabin, murmurs and gasps spread like wildfire. Naomi Pierce, Elijah's devoted wife, clutched his arm tightly, her face a blend of shock and desperate concern. Beside her, their young daughter Zara sat frozen in distress, her wide eyes reflecting the fear of a world that had suddenly become hostile. The entire family, despite their wealth and influence, was thrust into a situation that belied everything they had worked so hard to achieve. At the heart of the chaos was Teresa Young, the flight attendant whose stern gaze and clipped demeanor suggested she believed she was executing her duty to remove frauds from the flight. In her eyes, the dramatic display was a justified act, one that she believed would cleanse the cabin of undesirable elements. Yet, as the scene unfolded, it was clear that her actions were steeped in misunderstanding and prejudice. Passengers around them exchanged shocked looks, their whispered conversations laced with disbelief. Some tried to shield their eyes, while others watched, unable to tear themselves away from the unfolding spectacle. In that charged moment, the luxurious veneer of success that Elijah had long embodied was shattered by the brutal reality of injustice, an injustice that struck at the core of his identity. Even as security continued to work around him, Elijah's expression remained remarkably composed. His eyes, though pained by the physical assault, burned with quiet resolve. Despite the chaos, there was an unmistakable dignity in the way he held himself, an unspoken promise that he would not be reduced to a victim by this cruel turn of events. Meanwhile, Naomi's heart pounded as she tried to steady her trembling hands. Every instinct urged her to protect her husband and daughter, yet she found herself paralyzed by the shock of the situation. Zara, too young to fully understand the gravity of the moment, only knew that something was terribly wrong, and her silent tears spoke of a deep-seated fear. In that moment, high above the earth on Flight 412, a profound struggle was unfolding, a struggle not only for the freedom and dignity of one man, but for the principle that no one, regardless of status, should be subjected to unjust treatment. The chaos was raw and unfiltered, and as the aircraft soared into the night, the echoes of that fateful moment would set the stage for a battle that went far beyond the confines of an airplane cabin. After the initial shock of the arrest on Flight 412, the atmosphere in the economy cabin remained thick with tension. Despite the chaos, Elijah Pierce, even with a gash on his lip and restrained in handcuffs, managed to project a remarkable calm. Sensing the distress among his loved ones, he leaned toward his wife, Naomi Pierce, and softly assured her, "Stay with me, we'll get through this." His voice, steady and resolute, cut through the fearful murmurs of nearby passengers. In the dim light of the cabin, as the plane cruised steadily above the clouds, Elijah gathered his thoughts and focused on his family. Naomi's eyes, filled with both fear and unwavering support, met his as he spoke quietly, "I know this seems overwhelming right now, but remember, our strength has always carried us through tough times." He continued, offering gentle words of comfort to Zara, whose small hand he reached for in reassurance. "We're together, and together we are unbreakable," he whispered. As the minutes dragged on, the cabin buzzed with an uneasy quiet. Passengers whispered among themselves, speculating about the unfolding incident. Yet, amidst the uncertainty, Elijah's composure provided a beacon of hope. He initiated a hushed conversation with Naomi, discussing the possibility of finding a moment of peace during the flight despite the turmoil. "Perhaps after the security checks, when things settle, we can talk to the crew about getting some privacy," he suggested with a determined glint in his eyes. Naomi, drawing courage from her husband's calm, nodded slowly. "I trust you, Elijah. I know you'll fix this," she murmured, her voice trembling but filled with quiet resolve. Their conversation, though whispered, carried a profound sense of unity, a reminder that in moments of crisis, the support of loved ones can be a powerful antidote to fear. Around them, the ripple effects of the incident continued. Other passengers watched silently, some sympathetic, others cautious. Yet none could help but be moved by the dignity with which Elijah handled his predicament. His steady voice, even in the face of chaos, was a silent protest against the injustice he was experiencing. In a corner of the cabin, as the flight attendants moved about, murmurs of concern spread among the crew. Despite the ongoing drama, Elijah's reassuring words served as a catalyst for a more composed atmosphere. "We must remember," he said softly to Naomi, "that even in the darkest moments, we can choose to stand together, to be the light that guides us through." His words resonated deeply, not only with his family but with those who overheard them, instilling in the surrounding passengers a sense of cautious hope. Gradually, as the initial shock subsided, a subtle calm began to reclaim the cabin. Security personnel continued their work, and the flight's steady hum offered a counterpoint to the lingering chaos. Elijah's calm presence became a quiet anchor for his family. Every reassuring word, every gentle touch, was a testament to his belief that together, they could withstand even the harshest of trials. In that moment of turbulent serenity high above the earth, the Pierce family clung to the hope of resolution. Their whispered conversation was a pledge of resilience, a determination that no matter what unfolded, their unity would be their greatest strength. And as the plane sailed on through the night, the seeds of recovery were sown amidst the echoes of their quiet resolve. As the flight progressed into the later hours, the tension that had gripped the Pierce family continued to simmer. Now, a new conflict emerged, a confrontation over their boarding passes that threatened to escalate the already volatile situation. Though the tickets had been confirmed weeks prior, a stubborn insistence from flight attendant Teresa Young cast a dark shadow over what should have been a routine verification process. The incident unfolded near the front of the economy cabin. While the atmosphere was still recovering from the earlier chaos, Teresa Young approached the Pierce family with a suspicious glare. Her voice, laced with an edge of hostility, broke through the subdued murmurs of the passengers. "Excuse me," she began, addressing Elijah in a tone that brooked no argument, "but I need you to present your boarding passes again. We seem to have a discrepancy." Elijah, still reeling from the earlier ordeal yet determined to maintain his composure, calmly reached for the envelope containing their confirmed tickets. "Certainly," he replied in a measured tone, sliding the documents across the counter. His eyes, however, betrayed a subtle tension, a silent challenge to the underlying assumption that something was amiss with his reservation. Teresa scrutinized the papers with a critical eye, her fingers tapping lightly on the desk as if searching for flaws. The Pierce family exchanged anxious glances. Naomi's eyes darted to Zara, who clutched a small stuffed toy in her lap, her innocent face marked by apprehension. The air was thick with anticipation as Teresa's gaze shifted between the documents and the family. "These tickets were confirmed weeks ago," Elijah said quietly, almost as if to reassure both himself and those watching. Yet Teresa's expression remained unyielding, and her tone grew more accusatory. "They may have been confirmed, but something here just doesn't add up," she insisted, her words implying that the family's reservation was somehow suspect. The implication, subtle yet cutting, was that the Pierce family was not what they appeared to be. A hushed murmur spread among nearby passengers, their attention now fixed on the unfolding drama. Some whispered in sympathy with the family, while others watched with a mix of curiosity and concern. The tension was palpable, a silent battle of wills, where every word carried the weight of judgment and every gesture hinted at underlying bias. Naomi's hands trembled as she clutched her purse, her eyes reflecting a mix of hurt and defiance. "Our tickets are perfectly valid," she stated softly, her voice quivering yet determined. "We have all the documentation you require." Despite her clear effort to remain calm, the strain of the confrontation was evident in the slight shake of her hands and the set of her jaw. Teresa, however, remained steadfast in her interrogation. "I need to verify this for security," she repeated, almost mechanically, as she leaned over the counter. The routine procedure, which should have been a matter of simple verification, now felt like an ordeal. Elijah met her gaze with quiet resolve. "If there is any issue with our tickets, please show me exactly what is wrong," he challenged. His tone was firm, inviting transparency rather than further accusation. For several excruciating minutes, the tension in the cabin grew almost unbearable. The gentle hum of the engines, which had previously offered a soothing background, now underscored every anxious heartbeat. Teresa's fingers traced the edges of the boarding passes, her eyes narrowing as she searched for an error that simply wasn't there. Every so often, a nearby passenger would lean forward, drawn into the conflict by the gravity of the situation. Finally, with a dismissive sigh, Teresa looked up. "I still have my doubts," she said, her tone cold. "I'm going to have to report this for further review." The words, meant to cast further suspicion on the Pierce family, sent shockwaves through the cabin. It was clear that Teresa was not merely following protocol, she was intent on undermining their legitimacy. Elijah's face hardened for a moment, though his voice remained calm as he responded, "If you believe there's an issue, please let me see the specific discrepancy. We have nothing to hide." His eyes, reflecting both anger and disappointment, spoke volumes about the injustice of the situation. The Pierce family's dignity was on the line, and every passenger in the aisle felt the sting of an unmerited challenge. As the standoff continued, the atmosphere in the cabin became a microcosm of the broader struggle between prejudice and fairness. The family's quiet insistence on their rights clashed with the relentless probing of a flight attendant who seemed determined to cast doubt on their integrity. In that narrow space, the truth of their confirmed reservation stood as a silent testament to their legitimacy, a truth that was being challenged by an unyielding authority. With every passing moment, the tension mounted until it was almost tangible. The struggle over the boarding passes was not merely an administrative dispute, it was a battle for respect, a clash between the Pierce family's hard-earned dignity and the baseless suspicions of an overzealous employee. And as the cabin watched on in silent solidarity, the outcome of this confrontation promised to set the stage for further upheaval as the flight continued on its turbulent path. If you found these parts compelling, please comment below with, "Where are you watching from?" and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that empower us all to stand up for what's right. Thank you for your support. The atmosphere aboard Flight 412 had already been fraught with tension ever since the chaos erupted earlier in the cabin. In the midst of a sea of anxious faces and hushed conversations, a new twist began to unfold, a twist that would plunge the Pierce family into an even deeper maelstrom of conflict. It was just past the 3-minute mark when Teresa Young, the flight attendant whose earlier actions had sparked controversy, stepped back into the aisle with a determined expression. Her eyes swept across the cabin until they locked onto the Pierce family. With an air of cold resolve, she moved directly toward them. The hushed murmurs of nearby passengers fell to a stunned silence as she addressed them in a clipped, unyielding tone. "Sir, I'm sorry, but you and your family are causing a disturbance," Teresa announced, her voice echoing off the narrow walls of the economy section. Her tone was devoid of any warmth, and it carried the unmistakable weight of authority that left little room for discussion. "I must call for security immediately." In that charged moment, time appeared to slow. Elijah Pierce, sitting calmly in his window seat despite the chaos around him, maintained an expression of quiet dignity. Even though he was now visibly restrained by security personnel who had begun to converge on his family, his eyes revealed that he sensed something more sinister lurking behind the unfolding events. He knew that this was no ordinary mishap, there was an undercurrent of malice in Teresa's insistence. Naomi Pierce gripped her husband's arm tightly, her eyes darting nervously between the approaching security and the unwavering gaze of Teresa. Meanwhile, young Zara, clutching a small plush toy, sat silently as if trying to absorb every detail of the dramatic scene. The atmosphere was heavy with foreboding as the crew moved with precise, measured steps. Teresa's instructions were curt and uncompromising. "Security, please assist in escorting this family to their designated area," she declared, almost as if reciting a rehearsed line rather than addressing a human crisis. Her voice held a note of finality that sent shivers down the spines of those who heard it. Elijah, though dismayed by the turn of events, did not show panic. Instead, he exuded a serene calm, a stoic determination that stemmed from years of facing adversity. He met Teresa's eyes squarely and, in a voice as steady as the hum of the engines, stated, "I have nothing to hide, and my tickets are in order. If there's an issue, let's address it like adults." His words, measured and firm, carried a quiet challenge to the authority that now sought to humiliate his family. Teresa's face remained impassive as she signaled to a uniformed security officer who had just arrived. The officer, with practiced efficiency, moved forward and gently but firmly took hold of Elijah's arm. The action was swift, a stark, unyielding gesture that contrasted sharply with the composed manner in which Elijah had spoken. As he was led away from his seat, every detail of the encounter was etched into the minds of the onlooking passengers. In that moment, a murmur of discontent began to ripple through the cabin. Some passengers exchanged glances of sympathy with the Pierce family, others fidgeted in their seats, feeling the weight of an unfolding injustice. Yet, amid the commotion, Elijah's calm composure stood as a beacon of defiance. His eyes, though lined with the pain of humiliation, glimmered with the knowledge that there was more at play here than a simple mistake or miscommunication. As the security officer led him slowly toward the aisle, Elijah's mind raced. He sensed that Teresa's actions were not purely procedural, that there was a hidden agenda behind her determination to have his family removed from the flight. Could it be that someone higher up was orchestrating this disruption? Or was Teresa acting on her own misguided beliefs? These questions swirled silently as he maintained his unwavering calm, refusing to let anger betray his inner resolve. Naomi's soft, worried whispers reached his ear as she pleaded, "Elijah, please, let's just resolve this peacefully." Her voice trembled with a mixture of fear and hope, yet Elijah's response was measured. "We will, my love. Stay strong for Zara." His words were both a reassurance and a vow, a promise that he would not allow this injustice to define their journey. Every eye in the cabin seemed to track the unfolding drama as the security personnel continued their work. The subtle glances, the suppressed gasps, and even the hesitant murmurs of support from nearby passengers all painted a picture of a community holding its collective breath. In that charged environment, Elijah's calm was more than a personal stance, it was a silent call for justice, a reminder that dignity must be upheld even when power is wielded unjustly. In the midst of the chaos, the true nature of the situation began to emerge. Elijah's composed expression and the measured tone of his words hinted at a deeper understanding, a belief that this was not just an isolated incident, but part of a more insidious pattern of behavior. Even as the security officer guided him further from his family, he cast a final, defiant look toward Teresa Young, as if silently challenging her to reveal the truth behind her actions. The scene, charged with tension and unanswered questions, set the stage for the next chapter of an unfolding saga, one where the integrity of a family and the power of resilience would be tested against the forces of arbitrary authority. And in that charged moment, as the flight continued its steady journey above the clouds, the seeds of rebellion and a quest for truth were quietly sown. As the Pierce family continued to face the mounting scrutiny on Flight 412, a subtle yet profound shift began to take place. Following the dramatic intervention in Part 4, where security was called and Elijah Pierce was forcefully removed from his window seat, an undercurrent of suspicion swirled in the cabin. What had initially seemed like a routine security procedure was now revealed to be steeped in deception. Teresa Young, the flight attendant who had earlier orchestrated the removal, maintained a rigid composure as she carried on with her duties. But behind her professional facade, something was amiss. Over the next several minutes, whispers among the passengers grew louder as they began to notice discrepancies in her actions. It was as if her entire narrative, of a family disrupting the flight, was beginning to crumble under the weight of observable inconsistencies. Elijah, even as he was separated from his family and led further down the aisle, kept his eyes on Teresa. He sensed that her actions were not merely about enforcing protocol, they were designed to hide a hidden truth. In the midst of the tension, he seized an opportunity to speak up. With a calm yet unwavering voice, he asked, "Miss Young, could you please explain why, despite our confirmed tickets, you insisted on a security intervention?" His question was directed not at inciting conflict, but at exposing the inconsistencies in her behavior. For a moment, the aisle fell silent. Passengers, already on edge from the previous events, listened intently as Teresa hesitated. Her eyes darted around, betraying a flicker of uncertainty. It's standard procedure," she stammered, her words failing to mask the underlying confusion. But Elijah, ever the embodiment of dignity under duress, continued, "Standard procedure should not involve singling out a family with a spotless record. I have my documents here, everything is in order." He calmly retrieved a copy of the boarding passes from his pocket, holding them out for all to see. A murmur ran through the cabin as other passengers leaned in to catch a glimpse. It became apparent that Teresa's justification was crumbling. Her earlier confident demeanor was now replaced with a strained expression, and she struggled to provide a satisfactory explanation. The Pierce family's quiet resolve had begun to expose the cracks in the flight attendant's narrative. As tensions mounted, the murmurs of support from nearby passengers grew louder. A gentleman seated in the adjacent row remarked quietly, "That doesn't add up, their tickets are clearly valid." His words, though softly spoken, resonated with those around him, further undermining Teresa's credibility. The collective gaze of the cabin now shifted fully onto the unfolding dispute, a silent chorus demanding truth and fairness. Teresa's attempts to salvage the situation only deepened the suspicion. I must follow procedures," she repeated, her voice wavering as she avoided direct eye contact with Elijah. But the evidence was stacking against her. Every passenger now seemed to be watching, and the unyielding scrutiny made it increasingly difficult for her to maintain her previous veneer of authority. In a final, desperate effort, Teresa tried to shift the blame. "It's not about you personally, it's about maintaining order on this flight," she insisted, her tone now edged with desperation. But Elijah's calm retort cut through her feeble defense. "If maintaining order means upholding fairness, then let's not allow baseless accusations to ruin our journey." His words, delivered with a quiet, steely determination, struck a chord with the assembled crowd. At that moment, the true extent of the discrepancy was laid bare. Passengers began to exchange knowing looks, and the murmurs of discontent grew into a palpable sense of unity. The once assertive Teresa was now visibly rattled, her earlier confidence replaced by the weight of her exposed lies. The atmosphere in the cabin had shifted from one of tension to one of collective empowerment, as everyone present recognized that truth was emerging victorious. For Elijah, the exposure of the lie was not only a personal vindication, it was a moment of public accountability. His measured stance and unwavering calm, even in the face of blatant injustice, had resonated deeply with those around him. The support of his fellow passengers was a powerful reminder that integrity and truth could triumph over coercion and deceit. As the confrontation continued, the energy in the cabin became electric. Every word spoken, every glance exchanged, was a testament to the power of honesty in the face of systemic injustice. Elijah's insistence on clarity and his willingness to expose discrepancies not only reclaimed his dignity but also ignited a spark among those who had silently suffered under similar prejudices. By the time the questioning subsided, Teresa Young's lie had been thoroughly exposed, and the collective mood in the cabin had transformed. What began as an effort to discredit the Pierce family had backfired spectacularly. The truth now shone brightly, affirming that the family's tickets were valid and that their treatment was undeserved. In that charged moment, the passengers' murmurs coalesced into an unspoken demand for justice. Elijah's calm yet persistent challenge had not only dismantled Teresa's false narrative but also set the stage for further scrutiny of the actions that had disrupted their flight. The Pierce family, standing at the center of a rapidly shifting tide of public opinion, became symbols of resilience and unwavering dignity, a beacon for all who believe in the power of truth over deception. The tension in the cabin reached a dramatic crescendo as the conversation took an unexpected turn, one that would forever alter the dynamics on Flight 412. In the wake of the exposed discrepancies and the collective support for the Pierce family, a revelation of monumental proportions emerged. Teresa Young, the stern flight attendant who had orchestrated so much of the earlier chaos, suddenly realized that the man before her was not just any passenger, he was none other than the owner of Sky High Airlines. It all unfolded when, during the heated questioning of the boarding passes, Elijah Pierce's calm demeanor remained unshaken. His unwavering composure had gradually built a quiet case for his legitimacy. As Teresa faltered in her explanations, her eyes inadvertently fell upon a particular detail that had been overlooked, a subtle signature, a familiar corporate seal embossed on his boarding documents. In that moment, something in Teresa's eyes shifted. Her confident mask wavered, and a dawning realization took hold. "Mr. Pierce," she began hesitantly, her voice trembling as she scrutinized his documents once again. The entire cabin fell into a stunned silence. Naomi Pierce, standing by her husband's side, exchanged a glance of quiet triumph with him, while young Zara clutched her mother's hand, sensing that something significant was unfolding. Elijah's expression remained composed as he responded, "Yes, I am Elijah Pierce, and I am the owner of Sky High Airlines." His words, spoken with gentle authority, resonated through the cabin like a clarion call. For a moment, the very air seemed to hold its breath as the revelation settled in. The smug determination that had marked Teresa's earlier actions evaporated in an instant, replaced by a look of disbelief and mounting regret. Teresa's posture slumped as the gravity of the situation became undeniable. The powerful figure who had attempted to discredit the Pierce family now found herself confronted with a truth that she could neither ignore nor deflect. I had no idea," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. The revelation sent shockwaves through the cabin. Passengers who had once watched the confrontation with apprehension now reacted with a mixture of surprise and quiet admiration. For Elijah, this was a moment of both personal vindication and profound transformation. The recognition of his status was not a triumph of arrogance, but a reaffirmation of the hard work and integrity that had defined his career. His calm declaration had not only exposed the injustice that had been inflicted upon his family, but it had also turned the tables on those who would use power to oppress. In the ensuing moments, the dynamics in the cabin shifted dramatically. The once hostile atmosphere gave way to a sense of collective awe. Passengers murmured their approval as the truth sank in, and even those who had been neutral now found themselves rallying behind the Pierce family. Naomi, with tears of relief glistening in her eyes, took her husband's hand tightly as if to say that together, they had weathered the storm. Teresa, now visibly shaken, struggled to maintain her composure. Her earlier bravado was replaced by a palpable vulnerability. In a voice that trembled with regret, she attempted to explain herself. "I only followed what I believed to be standard procedure," she murmured, but her words fell flat in the face of undeniable evidence. It was clear that her actions had been driven by a misguided sense of duty and, perhaps, personal prejudice. A prejudice that had blinded her to the truth. Elijah's response was measured and compassionate. "We all make mistakes," he said quietly, his tone both forgiving and firm. "But today is about acknowledging the truth and ensuring that such injustices are not repeated." His words carried the weight of his experience and the resolve to use this moment to instigate meaningful change. The revelation of Elijah Pierce's true identity sent ripples far beyond the confines of that turbulent flight. It signified a dramatic reversal of power, a moment when the oppressed reclaimed their dignity by simply standing by the truth. In that charged atmosphere, the passengers were no longer mere bystanders, they had become witnesses to an act of accountability that underscored the importance of transparency and respect in all interactions. As the cabin slowly settled into a state of quiet reflection, the impact of the revelation continued to unfold. Conversations broke out among the passengers, discussing not only the significance of Elijah's ownership but also the broader implications for corporate accountability and personal dignity. The Pierce family, once subjected to baseless aggression, now stood as symbols of resilience and the triumph of truth over prejudice. For Elijah, the revelation was a turning point, a moment when the full weight of his responsibilities, both as an airline owner and as a leader committed to fairness, became undeniable. It was a reminder that true power lies not in intimidation or coercion, but in the steadfast commitment to doing what is right. In that singular moment, as the truth washed over the cabin, the legacy of Sky High Airlines, and the integrity of those who trusted in its promise, was forever redefined. The smug facade that had once cloaked Teresa Young dissolved into regret, and the entire flight bore witness to a profound lesson in humility, accountability, and the enduring power of truth. If you found these narratives compelling, please share your thoughts in the comments below by letting us know, where are you watching from? And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories that empower us all to stand up for what's right. Thank you for your support. Below are 4 expanded narrative sections reimagining the final chapters of the story using our changed names and details. In this retelling, our dignified billionaire is Elijah Pierce, his resolute wife is Naomi Pierce, and their young daughter is Zara Pierce. The stern flight attendant is Teresa Young, and the airline is called Sky High. After the shocking revelations on board Flight 412, the atmosphere both in the cabin and on the tarmac outside JFK began to transform. For Elijah Pierce and his wife Naomi Pierce, the ordeal had evolved far beyond a mere misunderstanding or in-flight altercation. It had become a defining moment, a call to challenge a corrupt system. In the midst of the chaos that had unfolded, as protests began to swell outside the airport and the actions of flight attendant Teresa Young were scrutinized by onlookers and regulators alike, the Pierce family resolved to fight back with the full force of the law. Inside the flight cabin, after the explosive confrontation over the boarding passes and Teresa's subsequent exposure, a palpable sense of injustice hung in the air. Word of the incident had spread quickly, and soon, the murmurs of anger and disbelief from fellow passengers rippled through the cabin. Many couldn't believe that a family with confirmed tickets could be treated with such disdain by someone who claimed to be upholding protocol. This collective outcry only emboldened the Pierce family. Outside JFK, as news of the incident spread, demonstrators gathered, their voices rising in protest against the perceived corruption at Sky High Airlines. Banners and placards denouncing discriminatory practices and calling for accountability adorned the terminal area. The public outcry was swift and forceful, a testament to how the actions of one overzealous flight attendant had ignited a broader conversation about fairness, accountability, and respect in air travel. Back in the airline's operations room, high-level executives scrambled to control the narrative. Yet, for Elijah and Naomi, it was too late to keep quiet. They had long believed that Sky High, once a symbol of innovation and trust, had begun to falter under the weight of internal corruption. Now was the time to act. In a private meeting held just after landing, the Pierce couple convened with a trusted legal team. The room was dimly lit, and the air was heavy with determination. Naomi's eyes, still glistening with both resolve and residual shock, met Elijah's as he outlined their next steps. "We cannot allow this injustice to stand," Elijah declared, his voice firm yet measured. "Teresa Young's actions have not only humiliated us but have also exposed a deeper systemic failure at Sky High. It's time we take legal action, not just for our sake, but for every passenger who has been wronged by this system." His words, resonating with the weight of his experience and the strength of his character, set the tone for the meeting. Their lawyer, a seasoned advocate known for taking on powerful corporate entities, outlined the evidence they had collected so far, internal documents, eyewitness accounts from fellow passengers, and even recordings made discreetly during the flight. Each piece of evidence painted a damning picture of negligence and bias, a pattern that stretched far beyond a single incident. As the lawyer spoke, Naomi interjected with poignant reminders of the emotional toll the ordeal had taken on their family, especially on young Zara, whose frightened eyes had silently borne witness to the chaos. Outside the conference room, protests continued to gain momentum. Social media buzzed with real-time updates from passengers and onlookers who had witnessed the drama firsthand. Hashtags calling for justice and demanding accountability trended nationally, fueling a broader movement against corporate injustice in the aviation industry. For the Pierce family, this public support was a powerful affirmation that their fight was not isolated, it was part of a larger struggle for fairness and respect. In that charged atmosphere, every detail of the incident was scrutinized. Investigators from the Department of Transportation and consumer rights groups began to take an interest in Sky High Airlines' handling of the situation. Rumors of internal investigation spread like wildfire, and soon, the pressure mounted on the airline's leadership to address the systemic issues that had allowed such abuse of power to occur. The Pierce couple, bolstered by both public support and the mounting evidence against Sky High, prepared to launch a full-scale legal challenge. Their strategy was clear, to hold not only Teresa Young accountable for her actions but also to force the airline to implement sweeping reforms that would ensure such incidents would never recur. As Elijah and Naomi left their meeting that day, their determination was palpable. They knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but they also knew that their unity and resolve would be the driving force behind a quest for justice. In that pivotal moment, the Pierce family's decision to take legal action represented more than just a personal vendetta, it was a stand for every individual who had ever been mistreated or marginalized by systems that claimed to protect them. Their battle was about reclaiming dignity, restoring trust in an institution that had once symbolized hope, and ensuring that every passenger on Sky High Airlines would be treated with the respect they deserved. And as the protests outside grew louder and the legal wheels began to turn, it was clear that this was only the beginning of a transformative journey toward accountability and change. The situation on Flight 412 took another dramatic turn when, amidst the rising public outcry and internal investigations, Elijah Pierce found himself taken into custody. After a series of heated confrontations and a barrage of damning evidence, Sky High Airlines, fearing further negative publicity, had no choice but to detain Elijah on charges that were as nebulous as they were unjust. The news sent shockwaves through the Pierce family and the broader community of affected passengers, who watched in dismay as one of their own was treated like a common criminal. Shortly after landing, Elijah was escorted by security officers into a small, sterile holding cell at JFK Airport. The stark fluorescent lights and cold, metal bars of the cell created an atmosphere of isolation that was in stark contrast to the dignified composure he had maintained during the flight. Despite his physical discomfort and the injustice of his detention, Elijah's mind remained sharp and focused. He knew that this was a temporary setback, a calculated move by those threatened by his determination to expose the corruption at Sky High. Inside the holding cell, Elijah sat on a metal bench, his thoughts racing as he reviewed the events of the past few hours. The evidence he had meticulously gathered during the flight, the inconsistencies in Teresa Young's behavior, the corroborative whispers of sympathetic passengers, and the undeniable validity of his boarding passes, swirled in his mind like a powerful vindication. He was not a criminal, he was a man who had been unjustly targeted by a system that feared transparency and accountability. Meanwhile, Naomi Pierce, deeply distraught but unyielding, immediately mobilized their legal team. With the help of a seasoned lawyer known for challenging corporate giants, Naomi began the painstaking process of gathering further evidence. Every detail, from the recorded testimonies of passengers to internal communications hinting at a broader conspiracy within Sky High Airlines, was compiled meticulously. Naomi's resolve was clear: she would not allow the detention of her husband to silence their pursuit of justice. In a small conference room within the airport, Naomi met with her lawyer and a handful of trusted advisors. The conversation was intense and focused, as they discussed their strategy to overturn the wrongful detention and expose the systemic failures that had led to it. "We must act quickly," Naomi insisted, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and determination. "Elijah's detention is not just an attack on him, it's an assault on every passenger who trusts this airline to treat them with decency and respect. Her words resonated deeply with everyone present, igniting a spark of defiance that would drive their legal battle. As the hours passed, the news of Elijah's detention spread rapidly across social media and news outlets. Protesters began to gather outside JFK, their voices united in a call for justice. Banners reading, "Free Elijah Pierce," and "Stop Corporate Injustice," waved proudly in the cool evening air, and the public outcry only intensified the pressure on Sky High Airlines to address the unfolding scandal. The collective voice of the people demanded accountability, and the mounting evidence against the airline was impossible to ignore. Inside the holding cell, Elijah's thoughts turned inward. Despite the physical discomfort and the harsh reality of confinement, he found solace in the knowledge that his struggle was not in vain. He recalled the unwavering support from his wife Naomi, the solidarity of the fellow passengers who had witnessed the injustice, and the truth that was steadily emerging. "This is only a temporary setback," he murmured to himself, a mantra that reinforced his inner strength. Meanwhile, Naomi's legal team was hard at work, coordinating with investigative journalists and regulatory agencies to build a comprehensive case against Sky High Airlines. They uncovered documents that revealed a disturbing pattern of discriminatory practices and arbitrary detentions, a pattern that suggested Elijah's case was not isolated but part of a larger, corrupt system. Every piece of evidence, from email correspondences to internal memos, painted a damning picture of an institution that had lost sight of its duty to its customers. In a series of tense phone calls and late-night meetings, Naomi and her lawyer strategized the next steps. They planned to file a formal complaint with the Department of Transportation and to seek a court injunction for Elijah's immediate release. The legal battle ahead promised to be long and arduous, but Naomi's determination was unwavering. "We will expose every injustice, and we will make sure that no one else suffers like this," she vowed, her voice resolute despite the exhaustion evident in her eyes. Outside, as the protests continued and the public support grew louder, the pressure on Sky High Airlines mounted to rectify its wrongs. The airline, caught in a maelstrom of negative publicity and legal scrutiny, found itself increasingly cornered. For Elijah, the experience of detention became a powerful symbol, a stark reminder that the fight for justice often requires sacrificing personal comfort for the greater good. In that grim, fluorescent-lit cell, Elijah's resolve was forged anew. He knew that his journey was far from over, that the path to reclaiming his freedom and dignity would be paved with challenges. Yet, as he sat quietly, the determination in his eyes spoke of a man who refused to be broken. Every minute in that cell was a step toward a future where truth and accountability would prevail over corruption and injustice. The detention of Elijah Pierce, far from silencing him, had ignited a fierce battle. A battle for justice that extended well beyond the confines of the holding cell and into the hearts of countless individuals fighting against systemic abuse. And as Naomi and her legal team prepared to launch their case, the resolve of the Pierce family shone as a beacon of hope for all who believed in the power of truth. After what felt like an eternity in the cold, sterile confines of the holding cell, a breakthrough finally came. Under mounting public pressure and overwhelming evidence of injustice, Elijah Pierce was released on bail. The news of his release rippled through the media, and the collective sigh of relief from supporters was palpable. Yet, even as Elijah stepped back into the bright light of freedom, the battle was far from over. Outside the courthouse, Naomi Pierce met Elijah with a mixture of relief and fierce determination. "This isn't the end, Elijah," she said, her eyes blazing with conviction. "Our fight against Sky High Airlines, against the corrupt system that allowed this to happen, has only just begun." Her words, spoken with unwavering resolve, echoed the sentiment of the many who had rallied behind the Pierce family during their darkest hour. Elijah, though still bearing the physical scars of his ordeal, held his head high as he addressed a small crowd of reporters and supporters. "I stand here today not as a victim, but as a man committed to justice," he declared. His voice was steady, carrying the weight of his experience and the promise of change. "I will work tirelessly to ensure that no one else is subjected to such unwarranted treatment." In the days that followed, Naomi and Elijah threw themselves into preparing their legal case against Sky High Airlines and the flight attendant, Teresa Young, whose actions had set off the chain of events. Their lawyer, armed with the meticulously gathered evidence from Flight 412, outlined a strategy to expose not only the wrongful detention but the systemic issues that had allowed it to occur. Every detail, from internal emails to eyewitness testimonies, was scrutinized and organized into a formidable case that promised to shake the foundations of the airline industry. For the Pierce family, the release on bail was bittersweet. It was a moment of victory, yet it also underscored the magnitude of the challenge ahead. Protests had continued to swell outside JFK, with demonstrators demanding accountability from Sky High Airlines. Banners emblazoned with slogans like "Justice for Elijah" and "End Corporate Injustice" filled the air, and the public support lent renewed energy to their legal battle. Naomi vowed that their next steps would be decisive. "We will not rest until every wrong is righted," she declared during a press conference. The statement resonated deeply with those who had followed their story, a clarion call for reform in an industry marred by discrimination and abuse of power. For many, Elijah's case had become symbolic of a larger fight against corporate corruption, and his release was just the beginning of a long road toward justice. As the legal process moved forward, Elijah found solace in the unwavering support of his family and the countless individuals who had stood by him. His brief release became a time of reflection and planning, a period during which he gathered his strength to continue the fight. "I am not here to beg for mercy," he said in a quiet interview. "I am here to reclaim my dignity and to hold those responsible accountable." The journey ahead was daunting. The legal battles promised to be complex and protracted, but with every step, the Pierce family grew more resolute. Their story had sparked a movement, a call for systemic change that extended beyond the confines of a single flight. In the hearts of many, Elijah Pierce had become a symbol of resilience, a man who had faced adversity head-on and emerged determined to champion the rights of every individual wronged by corporate malfeasance. In that spirit of defiance and hope, the Pierce family vowed to continue their fight until the corrupt system was dismantled and replaced with one founded on transparency, accountability, and respect for every customer. Their journey was far from over, but the release on bail had given them the breathing room needed to plan their next moves, a next chapter that promised not only legal victories but a broader cultural shift. As the crowd dispersed outside the courthouse, the echoes of their voices mingled with the sounds of a city determined to stand against injustice. For Elijah, Naomi, and their supporters, the fight had only just begun, a fight that would redefine the future of air travel and restore faith in the principles of fairness and equality. The final chapters of the Pierce family's tumultuous journey culminated in a dramatic turning point, a moment when justice prevailed, and power was decisively reclaimed. After months of legal battles, intense public scrutiny, and relentless advocacy, the truth had finally emerged. The corrupt practices at Sky High Airlines were exposed in all their grim detail, and the consequences were swift and uncompromising. In a landmark courtroom decision, the case against Sky High Airlines, led by the evidence gathered by Naomi and the Pierce legal team, was ruled in favor of the Pierce family. The judge's verdict, delivered in a clear and resolute tone, sent shockwaves through the industry. The actions exhibited by this airline and its employees were not only unjust but unconstitutional, the judge declared, his words a resounding affirmation that no one was above the law. For Elijah Pierce, the verdict was a long-overdue vindication, a validation of the integrity, hard work, and dignity that he had stood by throughout the ordeal. As the courtroom erupted in subdued applause, Elijah and Naomi exchanged a look of quiet triumph. Their journey had been fraught with pain and hardship, but it had also been marked by an unwavering commitment to truth and justice. In that moment, every sacrifice, the long hours of legal preparation, the painful memories of detention, and the public humiliation, had converged into a single, undeniable victory. Outside the courthouse, the scene was nothing short of celebratory. Protesters and supporters gathered in a spontaneous demonstration of solidarity. Banners and signs called for reform and accountability, and the crowd's energy was electric, a powerful reminder that the fight for justice extended far beyond a single legal case. In the midst of this outpouring of public support, Sky High Airline's reputation lay in ruins. The fallout was swift, the airline stock plummeted, internal investigations were launched, and key figures responsible for the injustices, including the embittered flight attendant Teresa Young, faced severe disciplinary action. Her once assured demeanor had crumbled completely, and she was soon dismissed, her downfall emblematic of the broader systemic corruption that had been exposed. For the Pierce family, the victory in court was not the end but the beginning of a new era. With the airline's collapse looming and the corrupt elements within its ranks purged, Elijah and Naomi took the opportunity to rebuild not only their own lives but also to help forge a fairer future for air travel. "This isn't just about us," Elijah proclaimed at a press conference following the verdict. "It's about every person who has ever been mistreated or marginalized by a system that promised safety and respect. Today, we reclaim our power, and we pave the way for a new chapter of transparency and accountability in this industry." In the aftermath of the verdict, Naomi vowed to work tirelessly to ensure that the reforms promised would be implemented. She collaborated with regulatory bodies, consumer rights organizations, and industry experts to establish new guidelines that would safeguard passengers from discrimination and abuse. Her passion and determination inspired countless others, and her efforts soon became a rallying cry for change across the aviation sector. As for Elijah, the victory was deeply personal. The courtroom decision, combined with the public outcry that had grown over the months, served as a testament to his resilience. "I have spent my life building an empire based on integrity," he told reporters, his voice steady and resolute. "Today, we have shown that no one is above the law, and that the truth will always prevail." His words resonated widely, offering hope to those who believed that even the mightiest could be held accountable. In the months that followed, the collapse of Sky High Airlines and the subsequent legal and regulatory reforms transformed the landscape of air travel. The Pierce family's story became a symbol of resistance and renewal, a reminder that the fight for justice is both arduous and essential. Their journey, marked by courage and the relentless pursuit of truth, inspired others to stand up for what is right, ensuring that future generations would never have to endure similar injustices. As the final chapter of their struggle closed, Elijah, Naomi, and Zara Pierce reclaimed not only their power but also their rightful place as champions of justice. Their triumph was a beacon of hope in a world that too often allowed corruption to go unchecked. In that moment, the legacy of the Pierce family was secured, a legacy defined by integrity, resilience, and the unwavering belief that together, we can create a future where fairness reigns supreme. If you found these narratives compelling, please share your thoughts in the comments below by letting us know, where are you watching from? And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories that empower us all to stand up for what's right. Thank you for your support.